Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, at Warshack if you want to call me by my in-game name, and we're going to be going over the top 5 legendary cards that came from this most recent expansion, Knights of the Frozen Throne. Keep in mind that all 5 of these legendaries are really good. There's not necessarily one that's better than the other. It's all going to be dependent on what decks you want to build and then the respective decks that these legendaries fit into. So I'll go over the legendaries, explain why they're so powerful, and then from there you can kind of figure out what you want to craft, if any, cards from this recent expansion. So the first one's going to be Malfurion. This is the Druid Death Knight legendary. So when you play Malfurion, not only if you have fan draw on the board, it actually lets you choose one. You both get the spiders and the scarabs from this guy. But more importantly, that the minion it summons when you bring it out, plus the 5 armor you get, is the ability to change your hero power for the remainder of the game. So you can choose between getting +3 attack or +3 armor every game. So the armor is actually so good against so many different classes because you basically turn into a taunt warrior or a control warrior. And if anybody remembers the Justicar meta, Justicar gave us 4 armor, and this is only 3. This is 3 armor per turn, so it's pretty close to the Justicar, and 3 armor per turn for only 2 mana is a cheap price, plus the ability to use 2 mana because that's what it costs to get 3 attacks, so you can actually kill minions is even better. Like this hero power is just crazy good, and most of the time when you play Malfurion on 7 versus any aggro or mid-range deck, you can outvalue them without a doubt. And even sometimes with control decks, you're playing against like a burn mage or some sort of combo based deck like a rogue, and you can just gain so much armor that by the time they're able to even get to you, your normal life points, like you've already filled up the board, or they're heading to fatigue, or whatever the case may be. So a really powerful druid card, and it fits in all sorts of druid decks. The only one it doesn't currently fit into the best would be the most aggressive druid, which is like aggro druid, but it fits into taunt druid, it fits into token druid, it fits into ramp druid, it fits into jade druid. It's a phenomenal card, and it has so many different uses. So heading off of the druid, we have the Mage DK, so not quite as popular as the Druid DK, but it's still found in most mage decks besides the Quest Mage, because the Quest Mage deck has an OTK. We're not really going to talk about that too much, but this is mainly found in like the Control Mage style, the Burn Mage style, and even some Tempo Mages as like a late game win condition, like if you were to run out of steam. So they'll actually sub out Yogg for Frost Lich Jaina, or play Yogg over the Jaina. It's dependent on the player, but either or, really powerful card, and it allows you to basically win in the late game because your hero power basically turns into it deals 1 damage just like it normally does, but if it ends up killing the minion, you actually get to summon a 3/6 water elemental with lifesteal. And as we know, mages don't really have a ton of armor gaining abilities or life gaining abilities. We have like ice block and ice barrier, and as those are really good, it's not a whole lot, right? We just have those 2 secrets, and that's basically it for the most part. So being able to play water elementals, not only do they heal you, they're 3/6 that you get for free, and they have the freeze effects and lifesteal. Sorry if I mentioned one or the other. But yeah, there's just so much value packed into this one Death Knight, and of course this has to compete with, again, the Druid Death Knight that we just went over, and some other Death Knights that we're gonna cover in a second. So all of these Death Knights very powerful, and definitely late game oriented, definitely, which is why the meta has slowed down so much, because everybody's playing these DKs, and these DKs are finishers in themselves, and they cost 8, 9, 10 mana at some point. So it's really interesting. So the next one we're going to cover is the Shadowreaper Anduin. So Priest, really popular right now with since the Druid nerfs, or what people have called the Druid nerf. It really didn't get hit that hard. It was hit decently, but not as hard as people think. I think Jade Druid's going to pop back up just after a little bit, and people realize that the deck still functions fairly well without Innervate. But regardless, this fits well into the Kazakus Priest. It also fits well into the Big Priest, or the not Highlander Priest, but the Resurrect Priest. There's a whole bunch of different names for it, but either way, this fits into most priest decks. And the Kazakus it fits the most probably is because you have Raza in the deck, and Raza allows your hero power to become 0, so then you're able to basically shoot 2 damage per turn at minions or their face, and every time you play a card it refreshes. Very powerful deck at the moment, definitely tier 1 for sure. I don't know where that mage deck lands. Probably the previous card we just went over, probably like low tier 2, maybe tier 3, but but definitely Priest if you're looking to play a really good deck. Craft yourself a Shadowreaper Anduin, start building yourself a Kazakus Priest deck or a Highlander Priest, or however you want to call it, and you'll do just fine. Really, really powerful card. Plus, it actually has a field clear built into itself, destroy all minions with 5 or more attack. It's not really why you play this, it's just kind of like a nice benefit, but the void form is why you play it. What this changes your hero power into. That's what makes it really powerful. So that was number 3. Number 4 is going to be Valeera. This top 5 is actually one of, I don't want to say the most interesting, but it's different because in our top 5s, we've normally gone over a mix of like legendary quests and neutrals, or mostly class specific and not a lot of neutrals. But this one's basically all the Death Knight cards, are the Death Knight class cards that are better than the others. You know, the Hunter one is okay, the Shaman one's okay. I mean, they're good in perspective decks, but they don't have anything on, you know, the Mage one or the Priest one or the Druid one. Those guys are just ridiculous. And the Valeera the Hollow, I think, is really good. Made its way into Miracle Rogue, made its way into Jade Rogue. Not that it's more Miracle is probably much more popular than Jade, but it's still a very good card. And once Valeera gets thrown down, it's kind of like your opponent is on a clock. Your opponent is on a clock because the value that she represents. They're able to play 2 Slayers per turn, 2 Eviscerates per turn, 2 Giants per turn, 2 Edwins per turn, and it's just eventually the opponent can't keep up for the 2-for-1 ratio. I mean, even if they have the Druid hero power down or the Mage hero power down, that doesn't necessarily, like, I think this can even outvalue them. Like, it's just, this is probably the most, besides the Priest one. The Priest one just does direct damage, but this, they could summon 2-3 Giants a turn, and it's just ridiculous. So Valeera the Hollow is definitely what I think is going to be one of the top 5, or is one of the top 5 legendaries that came out, just because when you play her, the value is insane. I mean, if you're top decking cards and you can't seem to find 2 cards that cost 5 or less to combo together to get the full potential from her, yeah, that sucks. But most of the time, when you play her, whoo, hot diggity dog, good stuff comes. Heading to our last one's going to be the Bloodreaver Gul'Dan. This is basically the new Jiraxxus. I don't want to say it's better than Jiraxxus because it's kind of dependent on the situation. If you checked out my Demon Handlock deck guide, we actually run Gul'Dan and Jiraxxus just because both of those cards are late game cards. So it's basically having 2 DKs in your deck. And normally when you're playing against 2 control decks running the 2 DKs, the first person to play the DK has a very big advantage over the one who didn't. So if you're running 2 of them, you have a high chance to draw basically one over your opponent. And on top of that, let's say you have Jiraxxus out and you've summoned a whole bunch of the 6/6s, and then you Bloodreaver Gul'Dan, you get to actually resummon all of those Dread Infernals that Jiraxxus brought out, plus you keep the weapon, and then you rechange your hero power, and then you're able to get more HP than 15. So there's just a lot of benefits to running both. There's also the not so benefits of playing if you play against aggro and you draw both in your opening hand. That's probably not very likely. If you're me, then it's very likely, but normal people, not very likely. So really good card. On top, like, the only bad part is 10 mana. When you play this card, you're not really doing anything else, but the good part is you gain 5 armor, which helps out a little bit, and you get to summon all friendly demons that died this game, and more than likely you're getting to summon at least 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 demons, whether they're Voidwalkers, Abyssal Enforcers, and the new Dreadlord something, you know, the 5 mana 4/5 at the end of the turn, deal 1 damage to everything. So it has good value. But on top of that, you get a Siphon Soul or a Siphon Life hero power, which is basically 2 mana, deal 3 damage, and then you actually heal for 3. So it's very competitive with the Druid hero power, because the Druid, you pick one or the other, right? You're dealing 5 with your hero power, or you're armoring for 5. This is actually, you get to deal 3, or not deal 5, deal 3 with the Druid. But this is actually deal 3 as well, but you're actually healing at the same time. But the difference between armor and health is armor can go over 30, your health will always be 30. So there's kind of a drawback there, but still really, really good card. Everything about it's good. It's not just like one part is better than the other. The hero power is good, the ability is good, the armor is good. The only thing that kind of stinks is the mana cost, but regardless. And then from there, that's our top 5. But I want to just note that the Lich King is still pretty good. It's found in a lot of different decks. I don't think I want to make this in the top 5 because he's not actually a staple in any particular deck. I was actually able to even do the deck guide on the Big Priest without having Lich King in the deck. So it's not like this isn't a mandatory card in any of those decks. But meanwhile, the DKs, like Malfurion, you have to have that card in your Druid deck unless you're running aggro Druid. You have to have, you know, Gul'Dan in your deck if you're running you know, a demon handlock deck. So it's just like those are staples in the deck, while Lich King is kind of just like a card you can put in that's cool. But it's definitely worth noting that he's still pretty popular and he's still a decent card. So he's like 5.5. So with that, that's my top 5 for the Frozen Throne expansion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if I happen to miss out on anything or you'd like to elaborate further on anything that I've mentioned, feel free to leave those comments in the comment section below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Of course, I'm Robert Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.